China was perhaps the most pressing topic this weekend at the Reagan National Defense Forum in Southern California. The gathering of 700 CEOs, top Pentagon officials, and lawmakers focused on how the U.S. should address China's rapidly advancing military power. I had the chance to speak to the top-ranking civilian in the Air Force, Secretary Frank Kendall, and I asked him if we are in a new arms race.
We're not in a traditional arms race where we try to buy more than somebody else and they try to buy more than we are. We're in a race for quality. We're in a race for military superiority, largely through technology. And China has observed, going back to the Gulf War 30 years ago, how we project power and what we rely upon to do that. And they've been building systems that are increasingly capable over a long time now, trying to target those assets of the United States. And we have to respond. So we're in a race in that sense.
One place China is arguably pulling ahead in terms of technology and capability is hypersonic missiles, which that country successfully tested this summer. But that is just one piece in the broader competition puzzle. General C.Q. Brown, Chief of Staff for the U.S. Air Force and the top-ranking military counterpart to Secretary Kendall within the service, spoke to me about the need for the Air Force to move faster as its approach to warfighting evolves.
We've always been focused on hardware. We operate in a software world, and we got to be able to move it at the pace of the rest of the world. And that's the challenge, I think, sometimes for our approach within the Department of Defense is we're more industrial based. We got to get more to a software based approach, which means we're going to have to go faster. And there's things we can learn from the industry partners of how we adjust to work together to be able to move faster together.
What are some of the emerging technologies or capabilities that you're most excited about?
Well, just this past week I was up in Silicon Valley, and one of those is, eVTOL, electrical vertical takeoff and landing vehicles. And so I met with a couple different companies to see where they are. And it was pretty interesting, partly because not only where they are today, but what their vision is for the future. And I see some natural applications that would support the United States Air Force at the same time. They look at it how it might support a commercial venture. And that's where that collaboration comes together, where we can actually work together to build upon capabilities that require not just for the Air Force, but also might operate in the commercial world.
Some high-profile examples of companies that have been working with the Air Force to develop their so-called dual-use tech: Joby Aviation, speaking of eVTOL, and C3AI. But overall, transitioning seed funding and R&D work from small startups into production contracts to actually bring that emerging tech to the battlefield, it's tough. So much so that venture capitalists that are funding these defense-focused startups and even officials like General Brown call this the Valley of Death. Now, in his keynote address this weekend, Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin even told attendees the Pentagon is, quote, doubling down on tapping the talent of Silicon Valley to cut the red tape and address the issue. But we have a ways to go, guys. And in the meantime, we can talk about the shift towards software, but hardware is still important to the DoD. I mean, in the case of the Air Force, the F-35, which Lockheed Martin makes, remains the cornerstone of the fighter fleet, even as that service is now developing a sixth-generation fighter aircraft as well.
This seems like full circle in terms of the military going to Silicon Valley, because, I mean, Silicon Valley kind of grew out of the defense business, right, in the 60s and everything.
Were originally funded and seeded in large part by the government in the midst of the Cold War in Silicon Valley, to your point. That was a relationship that started together and has since drifted apart. But there is a lot of red tape. It is very hard to work with the DoD. Officials in the DoD will say it themselves. And it was actually the topic of a panel I moderated at the Reagan Forum this weekend, that included General Brown, but also folks like VC investor and entrepreneur Joe Lonsdale.
Now, the clearances you need to work on this kind of material kind of limits your universe of vendors in a big way.
Shepard Smith here. Thanks for watching CNBC on YouTube.